February 19, 1942, 47 miles east of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, the black silhouette of U-boat 432 cut through the choppy Atlantic waters like a shark. Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Zimmermann scanned the horizon through his Zeiss binoculars, his lips curling into a smile as he spotted the telltale silhouette of an American merchant vessel, illuminated against the darkening sky. "Slow and fat like a cow to slaughter," he murmured to his first officer. "This is almost too easy." The American coast was a hunting ground unlike any other. Here, in what U-boat commanders proudly called the American Shooting Gallery, German submarines had sunk 397 Allied ships in just the first 6 months of 1942, more than 2.2 million tons of shipping sent to the ocean floor. Some nights, German submariners could see the lights of Atlantic City and New York blazing, civilian automobiles driving with headlights on, all while Allied ships were silhouetted perfectly against the glow. It was slaughter. In his leather-bound journal, Zimmermann had carefully documented his 7 kills. Tonight would be number 8. His crew of 44 men moved with practiced efficiency as they prepared for the attack. The Type 7C submarine, 220 feet of German engineering excellence, carried 14 torpedoes, each containing 617 pounds of high explosive. Each torpedo cost 40,000 Reichsmarks to produce, the equivalent of 2 luxury automobiles, but each sunken Allied ship was worth infinitely more to the Führer's war effort. "The Americans are children playing at war," Zimmermann wrote in his journal. "Their merchant seamen are untrained, their escort vessels few and inexperienced. We hunt at will along their coastline while they fumble in darkness." The U-boat captains called it the happy time. In Berlin, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz's Wolfpack strategy was demonstrating devastating effectiveness. With just 20 U-boats operating off the American coast at any given time, Germany was strangling the Allied supply line. Churchill later confessed it was the only threat that truly terrified him. Meanwhile, 200 miles away in Baltimore, 27-year-old welding foreman Martha Wilson wiped sweat from her brow as she supervised the attachment of a 20-ton stern section to the half-completed hull of a Liberty ship. The Bethlehem Fairfield shipyard operated 24 hours a day, illuminated by floodlights that turned night into day. 3 shifts of workers, many of them women like Martha who had never seen a shipyard before 1941, swarmed over the skeletal forms of cargo vessels in various stages of completion. "6 more welds on the port side, then we can move to the next frame," Martha shouted over the deafening cacophony of pneumatic hammers, acetylene torches and riveting guns, a symphony of industrial power that never ceased, day or night. 4 months earlier, Martha had been a schoolteacher. Now she supervised a team of 28 welders, many of whom had been taxi drivers, farmers or shopkeepers before the war. The woman working beside her, handling a welding torch with practiced precision, had been a hairdresser just 6 weeks earlier. What Captain Lieutenant Zimmermann didn't know as he stalked his prey was that America's response to his Wolfpacks was already taking shape, not primarily in destroyers or depth charges, but in an industrial mobilization unprecedented in human history. While Germany had launched just 25 U-boats in 1941 and would launch 238 in all of 1942, a single American shipyard, Bethlehem Fairfield in Baltimore, was on schedule to complete 94 Liberty ships in 1942 alone, and it was just one of 18 emergency shipyards thrown into round-the-clock production. Back in the Atlantic, Zimmermann gave the order to dive. U-432 slipped beneath the waves, leaving barely a ripple on the surface. Through the attack periscope, he tracked the merchant ship, an older vessel probably carrying machine parts and food to England. Distance 900 meters, speed 11 knots. "Perfect," he whispered as he calculated the firing solution in his head. His executive officer, Lieutenant Klaus Weber, stood silently nearby, stopwatch in hand. "Fire 1. The torpedo shot from its tube with a blast of compressed air, its propellers driving it at 40 knots toward the unsuspecting target. 50 seconds later, an explosion rocked the American ship. Flames erupted from its midships as it began listing heavily to port. "Another victory for the fatherland," Weber said, clapping Zimmermann on the shoulder as cheers erupted in the control room. In his logbook, Zimmermann wrote, "February 19, 1942, one merchant vessel sunk approximately 7,000 tons, minimal resistance, low risk. The American coasts remain the most target-rich environment in the Atlantic. Unknown to him, the ship he had just sunk was the SS Mary Luckenbach, one of the last vessels built using pre-war methods. It had taken 9 months to construct. Even as it slipped beneath the waves, its replacement, and the replacements for dozens like it, were already taking shape in American shipyards. 5 weeks later, in the offices of the U.S. Maritime Commission, Admiral Emory S. Land slammed his fist on a mahogany table. "88 days is too damn long," he growled, reviewing the construction time for a recently completed Liberty ship. "Kaiser's yard in Richmond is doing them in 30 days, and he's talking about getting it down to 2 weeks. The men around the table, shipping executives, naval architects, and production engineers, shifted uncomfortably. Before the war, building a 10,000-ton cargo ship had taken 250 days. Now they were being asked to do it in a tenth of that time. "The U-boat sank 70 Allied ships last month alone," Land continued. "Kaiser says he can build 3 ships in the time it takes Dönitz to build 1 submarine. I want every yard in America to match that ratio." The Liberty ship program was a gamble born of desperation. These were not sophisticated vessels. Their reciprocating steam engines were based on a 1910 design. They sailed at just 11 knots, and naval architects estimated their service life at just 5 years. They were ugly, utilitarian, and revolutionary. What made them remarkable was not their design, but the way they were built. Traditional shipbuilding was a craft. Liberty ships were manufactured. Their hulls were made from prefabricated sections, welded rather than riveted together. The ships were assembled from nearly 250,000 parts, all standardized. Many built hundreds of miles inland before being transported to coastal shipyards. By April 1942, as Zimmermann's U-432 continued its deadly patrol, the keel of the SS Robert E. Peary was laid at Kaiser's Richmond shipyard. Henry Kaiser, who had never built a ship before 1941, promised it would be completed in an unprecedented 10 days. In the pre-dawn darkness off Cape Hatteras, Zimmermann's tactical brilliance was rewarded with yet another kill. As the American tanker slipped beneath the waves, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The seas belonged to Germany. America might have industrial might, but transforming factories from peacetime to wartime production would take years. By then, he thought, it would be too late. In his diary that night, he wrote words that would prove prophetic, though not in the way he imagined. "We are winning a race against American production. Every ship we sink is one they must replace. They cannot build ships as fast as we can sink them." He was right about the race. He was catastrophically wrong about who would win it. Richmond, California, November 12, 1942, 4:27 a.m. The floodlights of Kaiser's Shipyard No. 2 turned night into artificial day. A deafening cacophony of industrial noise, the percussion of hammers, the whine of cranes, the sizzle of welding torches, echoed across San Francisco Bay. 18,000 workers swarmed over the skeletal forms of 7 Liberty ships in various stages of construction. At the launching platform, the SS Robert E. Peary gleamed in fresh gray paint. Henry Kaiser, the industrialist who had never built a ship before 1941, checked his wristwatch and nodded to his production manager. 4 days, 15 hours, and 26 minutes from keel laying to launch, the manager announced, barely concealing his astonishment. "We've just broken our own record by more than 5 days. What had taken 9 months in peacetime now took less than 5 days. No one in maritime history had ever built a 10,500-ton vessel this quickly. The Peary contained 5,000 tons of steel, 56 miles of welding, and 250,000 parts. Its construction had been broken down into 250 sub-assemblies, manufactured simultaneously, then brought together in a precisely choreographed sequence. As the champagne bottle shattered against the Peary's bow, 3 more keels were being laid in adjacent slipways. Kaiser's yards would produce 1 Liberty ship every 30 hours in 1943. Across America, new shipyards were achieving similar results. Bethlehem Fairfield in Baltimore, Oregon Shipbuilding in Portland, Delta Shipbuilding in New Orleans. In total, 18 emergency shipyards operating 171 slipways. Far away in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartenstein, commander of U-156, received an encrypted radio message from U-boat headquarters. Admiral Dönitz was concentrating the Wolfpacks on a new Allied convoy, SC-107, detected heading from New York to Britain. The Americans are sending their ships out in larger convoys now, Hartenstein told his executive officer, but it makes little difference. More targets in one location is better for us. What Hartenstein didn't know, for every ship his Wolfpacks sank, American shipyards were now launching nearly 3 replacements. The arithmetic of attrition was turning inexorably against the Kriegsmarine. In his private journal, Admiral Dönitz had begun acknowledging a disturbing reality. We are sinking Allied tonnage at a remarkable rate, 860,000 tons in November alone. But intelligence reports suggest American shipyards produced 990,000 tons in the same period. This cannot be accurate. No industrial system could increase output so rapidly. But the reports were correct. By December 1942, American shipyards were launching 3 Liberty ships daily, 700,000 deadweight tons of shipping per month. The U-boat fleet was sinking, on average, 300,000 tons monthly. The production gap was widening. At the Todd Houston shipyard in Texas, the keel plates of hull number 586 were being laid down as hull 585 prepared for launch. The yard foreman, Julio Martinez, a former automobile mechanic from San Antonio, directed his crew with practiced efficiency. Before the war, most had never seen a ship up close. Now they built them from scratch every 2 weeks. "We're not shipbuilders, we're assemblers," Martinez explained to a visiting congressman. "Think of it as the world's biggest assembly line. We don't build ships, we manufacture them." Each Liberty ship required 230,000 man-hours to complete, compared to the 1.2 million hours needed for similar vessels before the war. The vessels used standardized parts produced in 250 factories across 31 states. From engine blocks cast in Cincinnati to electrical systems assembled in Chicago, propeller shafts forged in Pittsburgh, and pumps manufactured in Buffalo. In the staff meeting room at U-boat headquarters in Lorient, France, Admiral Dönitz unfolded a report from German intelligence. His expression darkened as he read. "This document claims the Americans launched 82 new merchant vessels last month," he said, his voice tight with disbelief. "Preposterous. They cannot have increased production 8-fold in a single year." Captain Lieutenant Zimmermann, visiting headquarters between patrols, cleared his throat. "Herr Admiral, my last patrol was off Baltimore. At night we could see shipyard lights. I counted at least 12 hulls under construction in a single yard." "American ships remain easy prey," Dönitz replied. "Their quality must be poor if built so hastily." Again, the assumption was wrong. Despite their rapid construction, Liberty ships proved remarkably reliable. Of 2,610 Liberty ships built, only 4 broke apart due to structural failure, a lower casualty rate than traditional construction. At the Wilmington, North Carolina shipyard, the production line never stopped. The 15,000 workers operated in 3 shifts, with women comprising 18% of the workforce. Frances Wheeler, who had worked as a secretary before the war, now supervised a team of 60 welders. Her section had reduced the time needed to complete a ship's bow structure from 14 days to just 3. "We're in a race against Hitler's submarines," she told her crew at the start of each shift. "Every day we shave off our construction time means more supplies reach our boys overseas." The Liberty ships transported everything. 2,140 Sherman tanks to North Africa, 3,000 gallons of aviation fuel for the bombing campaign, 500,000 tons of ammunition, and enough food to provide 1,000 combat rations daily. A single Liberty ship could carry 10,800 tons of cargo, enough to supply 30,000 troops for a month, with everything from bullets to butter. As 1943 began, Zimmermann's U-432 prowled the shipping lanes south of Iceland. Hunting had become more difficult. Allied air cover had improved, convoys were better protected, and the sheer number of merchant vessels overwhelmed the U-boat fleet's capacity to intercept them. In his leather logbook, Zimmermann made a calculation. Germany had approximately 212 operational U-boats. Intelligence suggested America was now launching a new Liberty ship every 8 hours. His simple arithmetic revealed a devastating truth. America was building ships faster than all the U-boats combined could possibly sink them. During a midnight watch, Zimmermann confided to his first officer, "We are witnessing something extraordinary. The Americans have industrialized shipbuilding in a way we never imagined possible." It's no longer craftsmanship. It's mass production on an unthinkable scale. In Berlin, Armaments Minister Albert Speer received reports about American production with growing alarm. Germany's entire 1942 shipbuilding output, from racing boats to battleships, totaled just 1.2 million tons. American shipyards had produced 8.1 million tons of merchant shipping alone, with 19 million tons projected for 1943. "We are not just fighting the American Navy," Speer wrote to Hitler. "We are fighting the Detroit automobile industry, the Pittsburgh steel mills, the shipbuilders of 17 states, all repurposed for war production." At Kaiser's Richmond shipyard, construction time had fallen to an astounding 4.5 days per vessel. The production lines never slowed. As German U-boats claimed their kills in the Atlantic, the industrial heartland of America was already building their replacements. March 16, 1943, 320 miles southeast of Newfoundland. The North Atlantic heaved in 20-foot swells as sleet hammered the convoy's 47 merchant vessels. Aboard U-432, Captain Lieutenant Zimmermann peered through his periscope at the wall of ships stretching across the horizon. Convoy HX-229, bound from New York to Liverpool. "I count at least 40 vessels, including 7 new Liberty ships," he reported to his officers. "The hunting is still good." But something had changed. The convoy was surrounded by 13 escort vessels, corvettes, destroyers, and even a small aircraft carrier. Above, despite the foul weather, Allied aircraft appeared with disturbing regularity. Zimmermann had survived 11 patrols, sinking 14 Allied vessels, a record that had earned him the Knight's Cross. But U-432's luck was running thin. Fuel reserves were down to 19 tons. 2 torpedo tubes were inoperable due to saltwater contamination. Most concerning, his hydrophone operator had detected the distinctive ping of Allied sonar from 3 different vectors. "The Americans call them escort carrier groups," his first officer explained. "A small carrier with 5 or 6 destroyers, hunting U-boats exclusively. They're appearing everywhere now." What Zimmermann couldn't see from his isolated vantage point was the wholesale transformation of the Battle of the Atlantic. January 1943 had been the high watermark for the U-boat fleet, with 37 Allied vessels sunk, but Allied countermeasures were accelerating faster than German innovation. New escort carriers, improved radar, longer-range aircraft, and shipborne Hedgehog depth-charge projectors were turning the hunters into the hunted. Most devastating of all, the sheer arithmetic of American production was overwhelming the U-boat campaign. In Bethesda, Maryland, Admiral Ernest King studied the latest shipping statistics. "We're launching 175 new merchant ships per month, while losing an average of 38 to all causes," he told his staff. "The net gain is now over 130 ships monthly, 1.4 million tons. We're expanding faster than they can sink us." The Liberty ship had become the backbone of this expansion. By mid-1943, the average construction time had fallen to an astonishing 42 days across all shipyards, with Kaiser's yards averaging just 17 days. The record holder, SS Robert E. Peary, had been built in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes, less time than it took a U-boat to sail from its French base to the convoy routes. Behind these statistics lay an industrial mobilization of staggering proportions. In South Portland, Maine, a pre-war workforce of 1,400 shipbuilders had swelled to 30,000. The Todd shipyards in California employed 93,000 workers who built 119 vessels in 1943 alone. Nationally, the emergency shipbuilding program employed 650,000 people, 38% of them women. The program consumed 13 million tons of steel plate and shapes, 795,000 tons of castings, 700,000 tons of pipe, 53 million feet of copper cable, and enough lumber to build 300,000 5-room houses. The industrial scale dwarfed anything Germany could match. Beneath the waves, Zimmermann made his decision. U-432 would attempt a night surface attack against the convoy's perimeter. Stealth and darkness had always been the U-boat's greatest advantages. "Prepare for surface running," he ordered. "We'll approach from the southwest, where their radar coverage seems weakest." At 2:17 a.m., U-432 surfaced into a howling gale. Waves crashed over the conning tower as Zimmermann and his watch officers emerged into the spray-lashed night. Visibility was near zero, optimal conditions for a U-boat attack. Or so he thought. 6 miles away aboard the destroyer escort USS Champlain, a radar operator called out, "Contact bearing 247, range 11,000 yards, moving at 14 knots. Radar, the technology that was systematically neutralizing the U-boat's advantage of night attack, had caught U-432 in its invisible net. 3 escort vessels altered course immediately. Oblivious to the approaching threat, Zimmerman ordered full speed toward the convoy's starboard flank. Through rain-streaked binoculars, he could make out the silhouette of a Liberty ship, its distinctive profile unmistakable. The standard EC-2 Liberty design was not elegant. Naval architect Augustin H. Cox of the American Bureau of Shipping had created a vessel optimized for mass production rather than aesthetics. The ships featured a blunt bow, flat bottom, and angular superstructure that German submariners mockingly called dumpsters. Yet these ungainly vessels were carrying the supplies that would eventually crush the Third Reich. Each Liberty ship could transport 2,140 tanks, 300 fighter planes, or enough food to feed 1 million soldiers for a month. Single vessels had carried cargoes worth more than the entire cost of a U-boat. The SS Richard Montgomery transported 7,000 tons of munitions. The SS John W. Brown delivered 500 jeeps and 700 tons of ammunition to the Normandy beachhead. The first warning came too late. The U-boat's hydrophone operator detected the high-speed propellers of approaching destroyers, but before Zimmerman could order an emergency dive, the night erupted with blinding light. "Star shells overhead," his first officer shouted, as magnesium flares illuminated the ocean in harsh white light. USS Champlain's 5-inch guns opened fire at 3,000 yards. The first salvo landed 200 feet from U-432's bow. The second struck directly amidships. In his final log entry, recovered later, Zimmerman wrote, "Strange to think we are being hunted and killed by the industrial might of a nation we once dismissed. Their ships were supposed to be too few, too slow to build, too poorly constructed. We were catastrophically wrong." U-432 slipped beneath the waves for the final time at 2:43 a.m. on March 17, 1943. Only 7 of her crew of 46 survived. The Liberty ship she had targeted, the SS Patrick Henry, continued to Liverpool with its cargo of 10,000 tons of tanks, trucks, and aviation fuel. It was one of 2,710 nearly identical vessels that would be built before the war's end. In his Berlin headquarters, Admiral Dönitz received the reports of increasing U-boat losses with growing alarm. Between February and May 1943, 43 U-boats failed to return from patrol. Yet intelligence indicated American shipyards had launched 380 new vessels in that same period. "We are losing the tonnage war," Dönitz admitted in a private meeting with Hitler. "American production has achieved what we thought impossible." The statistics told the story. In 1942, U-boats sank 6.1 million tons of Allied shipping against 7 million tons of new construction. In 1943, they would sink 3.6 million tons, while the Allies built 19 million. For every vessel sunk, 5 replacements were sliding down American slipways. The Liberty ship, derided by naval architects as ugly, by seamen as uncomfortable, by Germans as poorly made, had become the decisive weapon in the Battle of the Atlantic, not through speed, armament, or innovative design, but through the brutal arithmetic of American mass production. As a captured German naval officer later confessed, "We never lost faith in our U-boats, but we could not build U-boats faster than U-built ships. The American Werft shipyard defeated the German U-boat." April 7, 1944. U-boat headquarters, Kernevel, France. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz stared at the map of the North Atlantic, where red pins marked the last known positions of 41 U-boats that had failed to return from patrol in the past 3 months. His Wolfpack strategy lay in ruins. "1 year ago we were masters of the Atlantic," his chief of staff murmured. "Now our boats can barely leave coastal waters without being detected and hunted." The Battle of the Atlantic had turned decisively. In May 1943 alone, Allied forces had destroyed 43 U-boats, nearly 1/4 of Germany's operational submarine fleet. Meanwhile, American shipyards had launched 140 new Liberty ships in that same month. "We are fighting an industrial colossus," Dönitz wrote in his private journal that night. "For every U-boat we commission after 18 months of construction, the Americans launch 25 merchant vessels in less time than it takes us to train a submarine crew. Across the Atlantic, in the canteen of Kaiser's Richmond shipyard, welder Jessica Morales enjoyed a 15-minute lunch break. The yard's Horn of Plenty cafeteria served 20,000 meals daily, including 1,800 pounds of meat, 7,500 rolls, 1,000 pies, and 600 gallons of coffee. The contrast with wartime Germany, where civilians subsisted on 1,100 calories daily and meat was a luxury, could not have been starker. "We're launching Hull 440 tomorrow," Jessica told her colleagues, women who had been beauticians, teachers, and housewives before the war. "That's my 9th ship since Christmas." By early 1944, the emergency shipbuilding program had reached peak efficiency. The average Liberty ship now required just 592,000 worker hours to complete, down from 1.2 million before standardization. The per-vessel cost had fallen to $1.7 million, less than a single torpedo bomber aircraft. "We're building them faster than they can sink them," Jessica's foreman announced during the morning briefing. "Naval intelligence says the U-boats are now losing the battle. They've sunk only 9 merchant vessels in the North Atlantic last month, while we launched 132. What had begun as a desperate gamble had transformed into the most successful emergency shipbuilding program in history. Between 1941 and 1945, American shipyards would build 5,777 merchant vessels, totaling 56 million deadweight tons, more than 3 times the entire pre-war merchant fleets of Japan, Italy, and Germany combined. In Allied POW Camp No. 18 near Liverpool, Kapitän-Leutnant Gerhard Weber, former commander of U-598, sat in stunned silence as British intelligence officers showed him photographs of American shipyards. "This cannot be real," Weber protested, staring at an aerial photograph showing 42 Liberty ships in various stages of construction at the Bethlehem Fairfield shipyard. "No nation could build ships at such a rate." "The Americans are currently averaging 7 days per vessel," the British officer replied. "Your Reich is launching 1 U-boat per week. They are launching 1 merchant ship every 9 hours." Weber was shown films of the prefabrication process, massive hull sections built inland at specialized facilities, then transported by rail to coastal shipyards. Engines manufactured in factories that had built locomotives before the war. Electrical systems assembled on production lines by women who had never seen a ship before 1942. "In Germany, we were told America was soft, decadent, incapable of industrial mobilization," Weber wrote later. "The reality was that we were fighting not just a nation, but an industrial system of incomprehensible scale." By mid-1944, the defeat of the U-boat campaign was complete. German submarines, once hunters, had become the hunted. Allied aircraft, warships, and escort carriers, equipped with radar, sonar, and new weapons like the Fido acoustic torpedo, had driven the U-boat fleet from the shipping lanes. But the decisive factor had not been technology or tactics, but the overwhelming productive capacity of American industry. At the San Pedro Liberty shipyard in California, the launch of the SS David Rittenhouse on June 12, 1944, marked a milestone, the 2,500th Liberty ship. In attendance was Joachim Steuben, a German naval architect interned in America since 1939, who had been granted permission to observe the American shipbuilding program. "I must report what I have seen," Steuben told his American escort. "In Germany, naval architects would never believe it possible to build ocean-going vessels in such numbers, with such speed." The statistics were staggering. The Liberty ship program consumed 16 million tons of steel plate and shapes, 2 million tons of additional steel in engines, boilers, and equipment, 850,000 tons of steel castings, 100,000 miles of electrical cable, 2 million cubic feet of lumber, 8 million rivets, 11 million feet of welding seams. The workforce peaked at 650,000 people, larger than the entire German U-boat service, support facilities, and administrative structure combined. Women comprised nearly 70% of this workforce in some yards, leading to another German intelligence failure, the assumption that American men were doing the construction. "Germany has utterly misjudged American industrial capacity," Steuben wrote in his report, never delivered to Berlin. The basic economics could not be clearer. Germany's U-boat strategy was doomed the moment America decided to simply outbuild the threat. By 1945, so complete was the Allied victory in the Atlantic, that Liberty ships sailed unescorted on many routes. German submarine commanders who survived the war would later describe the psychological impact of this reversal. "We knew from radio reports that ships we had sunk one week were being replaced by 3 new ones the next," wrote U-boat commander Otto Kretschmer. It created a sense of futility. How could we win when American industry was so overwhelming? In the final calculus, American shipyards had built 5,577 merchant vessels during the war, with Liberty ships comprising 2,610 of them. German shipyards had managed to commission just 1,162 U-boats, of which 784 were lost to enemy action. For each U-boat built, America launched nearly 5 merchant ships. Perhaps the most remarkable Liberty ship was the SS Stephen Hopkins, which on September 27, 1942, found itself confronted by the heavily armed German raider Steyr. Despite being outgunned 5-1, the lightly armed merchant vessel fought back with its single 4-inch gun. Both vessels were sunk in the exchange, but the Liberty ship had claimed a German surface raider, the only time in the war that an American merchant vessel sank a German warship. The Liberty ships continued serving long after the war ended. Though designed for a 5-year lifespan, many sailed for 20 years or more. The last active Liberty ship, the SS Albert M. Bow, was finally scrapped in 1970, a testament to the surprising durability of vessels built in an average of 42 days. Admiral Dönitz, from his post-war cell at Nuremberg, would later reflect on the failure of the U-boat campaign. The Battle of the Atlantic was lost not by tactical errors or technological shortcomings, but by American mass production. We simply could not sink ships as fast as America could build them. The Liberty ship, ungainly, utilitarian, mass-produced, had defeated the high-tech Wolfpacks through the simple arithmetic of industrial scale. Germany had bet on quality, America on quantity, and in this war of attrition, quantity had won decisively. German engineering excellence had been overwhelmed by American manufacturing efficiency. In the battle between precision and production, production had triumphed. If you found this story of industrial might fascinating, hit the subscribe button now for more World War II documentaries. Don't forget to leave a comment below, sharing which aspect of America's industrial mobilization shocked you the most.